not only is it insanely hard to prove whether like sacrifice funds were directly used to buy said diamond or watch or whatever, it's actually the opposite. There, in fact, is proof that that money has not really been moved or used for that. I want to just take a quick look at like a couple of the alleged charges here from the SEC. So number one is the obvious thing that they're throwing at everybody. They're throwing the kitchen sink. They did it to Ripple. They're going to do it to whatever your favorite token is, to everything that's in the top 20 that they already mentioned before in another statement. But the first charge is selling unregistered securities, the same thing that everybody is after. I mean, I don't even know. I don't even know how long we want to have this conversation, but I mean, that's going to be centered around Hex, Pulse Chain, PulseX, but primarily I think Hex. I mean, is there a better ecosystem or token in all of crypto to beat that claim, especially with the massive L that the SEC just took on the Ripple case?
Not at all. Not at all. Like I said, we've got the right man for the job to fight this. He's one. If you've listened to even an hour or 2 hours worth of any of his streams, you understand how intelligent he is. You know, there's been a lot of speculation. Did he kind of plan this? Did he give them enough ammo to kind of, or give him enough rope to hang himself kind of thing just to fight this? Is he playing that kind of 4D chess, man? Because if he is, that's pretty awesome. But I don't think anybody would bring that upon themselves intentionally. But whenever the other stuff started happening with the other influencers and things like that, I kind of think he knew at that point where, you know, it's probably coming my way too. So, but again, I think we've got the right person. He's going to educate them, hopefully very eloquently, and make them understand. We'll see. I mean, if it's, I don't know if you noticed or not, but it said that did it say demands a jury trial?
Yeah, that's actually relatively typical, though. I think that's usually what people do. I think it's kind of a bit of a threatening type move.
Well, I think he's charismatic enough to even win the hearts of a jury. You know, not many people are probably going to know about him unless you're in crypto. You know, he's not a public figure enough. So, you know, I really think that just his intelligence and his knowledge on the subject far outweighs any kind of, you know, I think he's eloquent enough to make it so it's not scammy at all what he's saying.
Oh,
you know, it's not anyway. But again, I go back to the point of where, you know, he's so well spoken and he's so educated on the entire space. He's going to walk circles around these guys because, you know, obviously the way this was written was either done by, you know, an intern or something, and they didn't proofread it. You know, it didn't put a whole lot of thought. Maybe someone had suggested that ChatGPT wrote it for them. I don't know, but it's
I think that's an insult to ChatGPT, honestly.
Well,
I think it was far worse than that, but
maybe. But there's a lot of very, you know, just non-factual statements that were made in there. So
yeah,
he's going to shoot them all down. Again, I hope he fights it. I don't want to see a fine. Like I don't even want to see him have to pay a fine. I hope he fights it and gets an outright victory because he is so smart.
Well, I think 110% he fights it. I mean, we're now seeing that. So the first day was relatively quiet, and I love the first response, if you want to even call it that, of him. The second day was the tweet yesterday that was just an update about the Pulse Chain testnet. And then today he just retweeted, you know, I think he's obviously seeing the Uniswap stuff. I'm sure he's seeing that, which we're going to get into, but retweeting some things that he has tweeted in the past. And then a nice long tweet a little bit earlier that maybe we can get into. He's clearly fighting this. I mean, I don't think there's any remote doubt. And, I never really even had one. Before we get to that, though, I want to acknowledge this second thing, because I do think this is important. So the unregistered securities, whatever, I think we all know how that's going to go. And yes, Richard Hart will be the smartest guy in the room with that entire discussion. But the second thing, the misappropriating funds, $12 million, using it to buy luxury goods. So There are multiple problems here. Number one, I'm obviously not a lawyer, I'm not a judge or anything like that. But I don't know that the SEC really even has jurisdiction to go down that road. I don't even think it makes sense for them to make that claim. And that's up to the judge, really, and to Richard's attorneys, who I'm sure will be the best that have ever walked the face of the earth, to shoot that down. And I'm sure they'll do a very good job of it because, again, I'm not trying to go on a diatribe here, but like this is like a hack job from the SEC. This is a clown show, make an example out of somebody because we just took one on the chin with Ripple. So they're throwing the kitchen sink in here. You and I had this discussion on X, Twitter, whatever, the other day. Not only is it insanely hard to prove whether like sacrifice funds were directly used to buy said diamond or watch or whatever, it's actually the opposite. There, in fact, is proof that that money has not really been moved or used for that. Go into that a little bit because this claim is just ridiculous on all levels.
I think the responsibility is on the court to prove that he did, not him to prove that he didn't.
Right, it is.
So as far as, we all know that the sacrifice money is still there. There's been plenty of people that have done the blockchain analysis and shown it. Now, yes, it has moved into several wallets. But it still sits all on chain. Mm-hmm. And, we all know that Richard had a lot of Bitcoin. He's been buying and mining ever since 2011. So, and he called the top. So who's to say that a lot of that wasn't from Bitcoin sales? Or he's got quite a bit of Ethereum too. So, for them to think that $1 billion was raised, I think it was like 1.4, 1.6 between both sacrifice phases, between Pulse and Pulse X. 1.4 billion, right? And they're talking about $12 million. It's such a small percentage. And I don't even think they got that right. I'm sure he spent more than that. Right. The dude had $10 million of watches. The diamond itself was valued at 3.5 or $4 million. And that doesn't include the cars. So you got all the cars, you've got, the clothes, all the Louis Vuitton, the bags, I don't know where that number came from. I really don't know, but either way, it doesn't matter. It's on them to kind of prove that he did, that those, you can see a chain from the sacrifice wallet into something else for a sale. And then the receipts for that. I don't even know. I mean, yeah, Crypto Frontier, I don't even know if the museum is still a thing. I haven't heard anything about it. He hasn't tweeted about it. So
surprised I don't know. In a lawsuit and something.
Yeah, I don't even know if that has like fizzled out or if it's still a thing. I think it'd be cool, but we haven't heard anything about it. But either way, there was, I don't think there's any proof. I don't think they can flat out prove that any of it was customer funds. Not to mention, even if it was a sacrifice,
who cares?
And he fulfilled his promise for the sacrifice. It's not like the sacrifice happened and then there was no product, right?
Right.
People got exactly what they sacrificed for. They got zero value tokens for both chains. They got their free airdrop. They got everything. So as far as I know, there were no promises that were made that weren't fulfilled either. So, that's another thing is, once that money is there, who's to say what he can or can't do with it? I don't think that's, again, their decision to make and say, well, he's marketing himself. We all knew that. We all knew from before. I've posted a video earlier today on Twitter that said something about, he's like, man, I got to punch through the noise. I got to be seen. And in order to be seen, I've got to dress like a clown. And if that's what I've got to do, I'm going to do it. Flat out said it. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I've got to get eyes on this. I want to help people fix their money situation, and this is the best way I know. And until it doesn't work, he's like, when it doesn't work, I'll pivot. So,
Right.
you know, again, it's all part of the plan. It was all, you know, it wasn't like he just went out blowing money. He was doing it to get eyes on himself. It was a marketing. As far as I'm concerned, he could write it off as that, exactly that, marketing, right? You know, he was his brand, it was branding, it was marketing. You know, even some of those things were hideous, and I would never be caught dead in some of the clothing that he was wearing. But he admitted he looked like a clown, you know?
Yeah.
So again, you know, it's just, that's how I stand on it. I just don't think they can prove it. I think it's all still there. So even better.
Yeah. I think it's all still there. And, you know, I've heard multiple people from, I guess, some of the big influencer channels that are talking to some of the Hex folks that, you know, we have this kind of like these two entities coalescing now. We have like the big, like we talked about Scott Melker earlier. There's going to be others, I'm sure, that are getting their heads more out of the sand and looking more at this and talking to Hexicans, and we're kind of meshing that together. But I mean, I heard somebody ask directly the other day, like, well, what would your feeling be if you found out he did that $12 million was, or whatever number was directly? Like, I don't care at all. I really don't care. Like you said, there is a product. It's pretty much universally liked and better than Ethereum right now. It's far cheaper. You know, that, yeah, there's been some little snags and stuff along the way, and people wanted Pulse Chain to be out earlier than it was and things like that. But, you know, overall, yeah, the product is there. And like, it's not up to me what the guy does with his money. Not only that, we don't know for sure, but it's highly likely, and with our own eyes, seems as if he had plenty of money for these kind of things for quite a long time. So
right.
That's the whole thing about like, who are the victims here? We don't know any other than like one or two names from New York, which we'll get to because that's the jurisdiction in this case, because at least one Hex investor is in New York. Well, I mean, if that's what you need for jurisdiction, why isn't it in like Tampa, Florida? Why isn't it in Wichita, Kansas? You know, like, just put it anywhere then, you know?
Well, New York has one of the strongest laws against crypto in general. You know,
I get that. I totally get that. I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm just saying that like there are investors everywhere. I'm just saying it's clear that it's clear their manipulation of this. That's all. I know why they're doing it. I'm just saying that you can't just cherry pick because a guy is in New York. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I that's all I was saying. It's just,
well, let's talk about that jurisdiction point though. So the fact that Uniswap, okay, so within their complaint or these allegations, they're saying that the fact that Uniswap is based in Brooklyn, or that the founders or developers, or however they're trying to twist it to pretend that this is a Brooklyn or New York incident, that they're based in Brooklyn, the Uniswap people, and that a lot of the transactions happen on Uniswap, and at least one investor lives there. I mean, it's a real stretch. And honestly, I don't know who the judge will be in this case. And it's not as if we're all highly educated on who these judges are and every facet of their personality. But I have to think, if they're looking at the SEC and if they don't have any kind of huge bias, knowing what the SEC has just done previously, and knee-jerk suing Richard Hart, a mere, I don't know, 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks after losing the Ripple case, all these reactions, and then just throwing a bunch of shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. For a good judge, I would think it's going to create a heavy eye roll. I mean, some of this stuff. Well, what do you think about that? And again, you know, Richard Hart's lawyers are going to be fantastic. So this just smacks of like, do you even know what you're talking about here when you wrote this up?
And I don't think they do. I think it was a desperation shot because they've heard so many people talking scam. I think that's really all it is. I don't think, I really don't think they stand a chance. I don't know what more, you know, needs to be said, but because all of their stuff is so non-factual or not provable, it should be an open and shut case. Now, I know they like to drag these things out forever. The problem is when you drag things out forever, it costs people a ton of money, and they hope that you use all your funds or whatever it may be to fight the case and end up settling anyway. But I really don't think that's going to be the case. I just don't.